Hey, welcome everyone to the Archicad User Monthly webinar for September 2021. Let me know that you can hear me and see the screen. I've got one of the projects that someone submitted for today's coaching and review, and we'll be getting started with this project or one of the other ones momentarily. And when you're typing in, let us know that where you're calling in from, so I can read that off. It's nice to know how far afield everybody is. And if you're in the Archicad Best Practices 2020 course or the Archicad coaching program, you can communicate with me via the Slack workspace and in the coaching calls channel. I see Mike Venichuk saying hello. And if you're not in that, you're just one of the Archicad users around the world who comes in periodically to watch these webinars, please post it in the GoToWebinar questions area. So I see Paul Whitworth, Rich Matthews from down under, must be pretty early, like 6 a.m. there, is that right? Rick from Tokyo, it's even earlier, I think it's like 5 a.m. there. And Ian from Scotland. So we're the very first few people. We're in 4 different continents. Mohammed, I'm not sure where you're based, if you're maybe in the Middle East. And Eric in Seattle. Rob, you're on, that's your project. Yep, there you go. Michael in Maine. And so Rob, you're in Cheshire in the UK. Does the Cheshire cat come from your area? Anyway, so Mohammed from Saudi Arabia. So we are around the world. I'm not sure if we have any, and then we have a Brazil, Mario Lordero. So we are covering North and South America. We just probably don't have Antarctica, but anyway. All right, and Nicole from Berkeley, right around the corner from me, and Igor from Toronto. I lived in Toronto for 18 years, Igor, so nice to have you on the call. All right, so we'll get going. Now, subject of today's call is basically a coaching clinic, as well as a project review for those of you who wanted me to look at your project as a whole and just give you general feedback. Now, let's see, I'm going to open up the line, I think, for Rob. Since I've got this project open, let me get this here figured out. And do feel free while we're going, if you have questions, that you'd like to ask about what I'm doing, or follow-up questions, or you simply have a question you didn't submit by email that you'd like me to address, then just type them into either Slack or into the questions area. So let's see, this is Rob. Let me get Rob here. So Rob, your line is open.
Good evening.
Hey.
Good afternoon.
So you're in Cheshire.
That's right.
What part of the UK is that?
So think of Liverpool, where the Beatles come from. That's where I came from.
Okay.
Went to the same school as John Lennon, and we live maybe 20 miles to the east of Liverpool and down a little bit.
Okay.
Countryside.
Now, is the Cheshire cat from there?
Yes, it is.
Just occurred to me, why did he name it, or why did he call it the Cheshire cat? Or is there
because it's a beautiful part of the world, and that's where all the best cats live.
Ah, okay, good.
Cream, I think, something daft. I'm not too sure, to be honest.
All right. So we have a project here. Let's just hear it for a moment architecturally about the project, and then we can look at the areas that you'd like me to at least give you some comments or some help with.
Okay, so this is a proposed view. It uses the Renovation Tool quite a lot. So if you were to click on the Renovation Tool, you will see the existing plan, and then
wow. Okay, let's get an aerial view. So this is existing.
Yeah.
And this is proposed.
Yeah.
Yes, you're actually removing a bunch of stuff here.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
So I mean, Ian from Scotland. Anybody in the UK will be very familiar with this kind of bit of reconstruction, if you like. So originally the house didn't have all that junk on the back of it there.
Mm-hmm.
Because the existing building as you see it there, when it was originally built, maybe in the early 70s, that rather ugly garage would not have been there, and that extension on the back is actually 200 mil lower than the floor of the original house. So you drop down into there, it's damp, it's horrible. That's all coming down, and my stepdaughter wants to do what we call a wraparound extension. So if you were to whiz round, it effectively goes out to the side of it and then out to the back.
So let's put it to the proposed here. Okay,
yeah,
so actually,
yeah, it's that side. Yeah, it's the west side. That's it.
All right, so this is proposed, and let's go to existing. Whoops, here. Okay, so we're adding
Yeah.
there and in the back and removing this ugly garage there.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, so you said this is a pretty common sort of situation, but it does require really extensive setup in terms of the renovation filters, and I can see, one sort of odd visual thing in terms of the way the roof is being rendered there, and a couple of little other things. But overall, it looks like you've done a pretty clean job. I'm going to comment, or rather use this as a moment to just explain, for those of you who are less familiar with the renovation tools and setup, I'll give you the 1 or 2 minute explanation. So for example, this area is not changing. So it's set up. Let me bring up the renovation palette. Let's see, palettes, renovation. So this area here is existing and it's going to remain, as is this roof here. Now this is new, and we can see the designation that it is in new status. Now if I switch to the existing, then we'll see, for example, this information here, which is in demo mode. So all of the stuff that was drawn there is set up to disappear. So that's our basic renovation tags. And then the renovation filters allow you to go and say, hey, let's show the demolition area in a color. So actually it's going to be, wasn't necessarily obvious from the earlier, before and after, that you're actually tearing this part out. Of course, we knew that this was going to go. When we go to demolition only, which is, I haven't seen that very frequently, but it's a filter just only showing the stuff that's going to be removed. And then after demolition, of course, we have, at least in theory, in sort of abstract terms, this is what you'd have after it's removed. You probably would never see the building look like this, but because of the phasing. Proposed over existing, okay, so this is highlighting the new stuff and highlighting what's being removed. And now proposed is here. Now let's just take a look at one thing here. What's going on with this roof? So this roof, the existing here, is extending past the new. Now it's natural that if we go to the existing conditions, this actually overhangs that area. What we'd want to do, ideally, if we wanted to, the cleanest result, is to designate that little strip as being, potentially, it depends on how we do it. If I go to proposed here and we take this and say that this, the edge here, we might pull this back to there. Now we're not seeing that line because we're basically only showing the new stuff. So that's probably the simplest thing to do, even though, there's going to be much more structural work done in there than, and it looks we're not seeing that as much there, but it's still visually, we can still tell this. So this is optional, but it would give a cleaner result as I do that. Now I also see just a little modeling error here, or something that hasn't been dealt with. So this is a wall that is new.
Mm-hmm.
This roof is new. So sometimes we have issues where things exist and they're being trimmed in different ways at different times. Here it's going to be pretty simple. Just take this wall, or the roof and the wall, and probably the simplest thing, at least I would do first, would be to connect them, trim elements to roof shell, use the roof that's currently selected, and you can see that disappears. So, obviously a very tiny little thing. What's going on here? So we have, is this an actual bump out?
Nope.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
Um,
No.
So this is interesting, just in terms of modeling. Why are we seeing this up in here, but not down there? We can see it. Or is it a gap? Is it a gap? Actually, it's a gap in here.
I know what it is.
Okay, so it has to do with an interior wall,
Yeah.
cleaning up to the other elements. So we could go in there and fix that. We'd also want to potentially look at what's going on with the roof alignment there. So this is a new roof. Of course, it's meeting up with the existing roof and with the what do you call it? And this other piece of new roof.
Yeah, extension. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably what this is we just need to extend this piece over a little bit and shorten that one so that they meet, properly. Now, you asked for general feedback. Overall, I'd say, the model looks pretty clean. We haven't looked at any of the construction documents. What in particular would you like some feedback on?
I think first of all, I mean, there are a lot of errors, right? I'm using this tool to cut my teeth using Archicad. This is probably my fourth model I've done, and I'm trying to use it as best I can. And I think really the big mistakes I make are, particularly talking to my stepdaughter, who is my client, shall we say, she changed her mind many times over. So, if I was a fully fledged architect, I'd be charging a fortune. But I think what I keep doing is I'll create a new version and I'll copy and I'll paste. And I think I just keep introducing errors, certainly into the walls, particularly when aligning walls up, junctions at walls. That in particular troubles me. So on the view you're looking at now, as a good example, you have, so that's the proposed view. So if you look at the existing view and then flick back, get an idea. So the wall that's building, yeah, so that where you're just to the right of your cursor there, that junction there, okay, I'm going to demolish that conservatory and I'm going to now butt a new wall up against that, okay, and drawing it in the proposed view. Now you're seeing it in what we would call the planning view. So, but in the actual detail.
All right. So let's look at your construction document. So we have plans for first floor. So we are on the ground floor. So ground floor proposed.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you have a different style of view that's?
So if you change the pen, so I use a graphic override. On the bottom, yeah.
So do you have a view saved for the plan that you're just describing right now?
I haven't created a layout view for it, no.
Okay, all right. So that would be a suggestion. But which one? This is our graphic override. You want to turn off graphic override?
So if you go to design.
To what?
O2 Geo Design.
O2 Geo Design. Okay.
Yeah, and that should, there you go.
Okay. All right. So now we're seeing, of course, different depiction of the wall.
Yeah.
So this is insulated here, and this is just hollow.
Yes, cavity gap wall.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what now that we're looking at it in more detail, what do you have
Right.
specific questions or problems with the way that this is depicted or the way it's modeled?
I think really it's the way it's depicted, and then not necessarily the way it's modeled, because a builder will take this drawing and say, oh, okay, yeah, we're putting a cavity wall installation on the back of there, and they would quite cleanly not have this cold bridging arrangement just to the left of your cursor. I mean, that's not normal. You would have a gap, yeah, between the insulation there. That junction is not correct. You would take that through and create a cavity gap.
Okay, so because I'm not familiar with the terms you're using, cavity gap, et cetera, this is a cavity.
That's a cavity.
You're talking about the insulation coming down?
Yes.
So they would remove that, and would this looks like an exterior wall condition? What's going to go on inside here? Because this is now interior space, right?
Correct. Yeah. So that would then, so in the proposed design, that would be plastered on the interior.
Mm-hmm.
So on the interior side, so that wall will be split. So that's easy in the zone, using the zone tool to do that. But in terms of the detail on this drawing, so if I was to present this drawing to a builder, he'd laugh at it, because
right.
he would need to see where that insulation is coming up against the outer wall, as you see here. In reality, you would cut through,
Right.
potentially cut through, or create some kind of bridge.
Okay, so I'm not sure of how the detail would work, but as you mentioned, you would want to split the wall into the part that remains, relatively unchanged. So let's just do a very simple thing here, just as an example. And again, I won't have time to try to work out great detail, but just show a conceptual starting point. So if I go and say I'd like to split the wall, now I could split it at this point, or I could split it here or there. I'm going to say this point would be interesting because we want to make the insulation come down and join here. Would that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to split the wall here. Now, so now these are, we don't see a change, but this piece of wall is now going to be different. Now, if I were to pull this back to here, now we have this gap, right? Now the insulation, would it go down to this point?
Yeah, it would at least come through.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure, but let's say that one possibility, let me just undo that, is to, this will sort of be a brute force demonstration. I'm going to go in and say, I'd like to edit the composite and profile. So you've got some masonry, you've got the cavity space here, and I'm going to create a duplicate of it here, and we'll, let's say, well, I'll just leave it as the copy name there. Now, what I want to do is change this outside masonry brick to something that is, it maybe looks the same, because actually, if you're going to leave this there, you're not going to actually demo it. You're just going to plaster over it. I just want to make it a different building material that will be permeable or have lower priority than the insulation. So I've just created a new one there, but I now need to go to the building materials, and let me just select these walls here and go to the options, element, attributes, building materials, and say, all right, let's look at them sorted by priority. And we can see that the masonry here, I think is this the block generic?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the block generic, is stronger than insulation, which makes perfect sense. But what I'm going to do is create a duplicate of this.
Okay. Yeah.
And we'll just give it a designation, just so that it stands out differently. And then I'll take this duplicate and I'll move it down below the insulation. So it'll have a lower priority. Now, just by creating it doesn't do anything at all to the drawing, but now I can select this wall and say edit this. Now, first of all, I'm going to change the wall to the new copy that I had done. It doesn't look any different, but then in the new copy, I'm going to say masonry brick generic. Oh no, it was block generic interior. So it was brick generic. Let's see, we have the plaster on the inside, right? Okay, so let me actually see. I guess I duplicated the wrong building material in not really recognizing here. So we'll put a building material. So the block generic, we want the brick generic. So where is brick generic? Looks like it's actually lower priority than the insulation. That's interesting. So what I wanted to do was create a building material that was lower priority than the insulation, and yet we already have one. So why is this not changing the way it's cleaning up? I'm going to just take these, probably because these two are not cleaning up to each other. So let's actually, let me just take this here and take this back here. No, okay, so these two, let me just drag a copy of them off to the side to see. So I'm going to drag a copy off to the side like this. So the question is, why is, if this is a higher priority than this one, why isn't it cleaning up? Let me think about this. This should, so these are turning the corner, but this is higher priority. So let me see if we were to change the reference line here. So we go to the edit, reference line and plane, modify wall reference line, and say I'd like to put it on, let's say, the core outside. Okay, so now it's placing it there. Now, if I take this down to there, okay, so now we're seeing at least a possibility here. Now, this is apparently stronger than this, or these. Oh, it's interesting. This is reversed. I guess.
Yeah, because that's an extension wall. So that was an outside wall.
Right. And this is
inside wall, of course.
And this is the interior, yeah. So we may have to do a combination of things, but what we ultimately want to do is play. And again, this may take longer than we have time to do. We would want to break up these walls into potentially 2 or 3 pieces, or we've got 2 pieces, but we might need a 3rd piece in order to get the effect that we need, and end up with the insulation coming down and things cleaning up to each other the right way. So you're going to be doing some reconstruction in this area to get the insulation down there and to cut off parts of the masonry. So that would be a starting point, would be to break it into multiple pieces and help Archicad make the cleanup of the corner. And you'll want to also consider, in some cases, just having the the building materials with the right priorities so that they pass through. In this case, the interior one has seems to have a higher priority than the exterior. So that might be something we need to consider. So if we go here to building materials, actually, select these two. When you select them, you can then sort of see the ones that are in use. It makes it much easier to adjust. So let's just do a quick test here of saying that the brick generic and block generic, what if we were to take the, so the brick is the outer one. What if, let me just take this down.
Brick is the
just what happens if I do that. Now we've got a different different type of cleanup going on with the plaster in here. We would be putting the plaster on this. So this one we're going to be plastering over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I and we've designated this as a what do you call it? So the masonry here, which was the outside face, I'm going to insert a skin of the plaster gypsum. So we'll say insert a skin. We'll say that this is going to be the plaster gypsum. And of course, the thickness is going to be 15 mil. So 15 there. So now, and this is going to be, yeah, it should be a finish there. All right, so now you can see I'm starting to at least get, you know, the plaster on this area. Question is, why is this? Is this the actual same composite?
I just wonder, it's nothing to do with the, you know, the renovation tool, is it? Because it's
this is proposed or new, and this is existing. So let us see if we were to, in this copy here, just make them both existing, just see what that does. Yeah, oh, look at that. Okay, so now, so there is a setting here that in the renovation filter options that has to do with whether existing elements are going to intersect with new elements in this particular filter. So if we say we do want to allow them to intersect because they're going to be sort of reconstructed to intersect, then I can undo back, and this is now new, but it's still doing a cleanup. And in fact, now we've got this turning the corner here. So now, of course, this wouldn't go through like this, but we'd have to keep playing with the priorities to get, you know, we don't want the insulation to be the highest priority. That would, you know, that doesn't make any sense.
No, that was a good find. It's the renovation tool.
Yeah. So I just moved these both down there. So I think, what was it? Was it the brick one that was the, well, let me just move them above the insulation here and see what that does. Okay, so now you can see that as we play around with it, we end up with, you know, some different results. So just by doing some experimentation, making sure that this is higher than this one, and this one might be, we might use the copy one to make it a lower priority. So let's see this one. So I'm realize that I want to go on to other ones, but here's brick generic.
I think, Eric, you know, what you've just demonstrated there is, you know, I will now work with that and then just establish what's going on there. But I figured it was a renovation tool thing, and make sure I've got my priorities correct. But the renovation tool with the do not intersect uncheck, which is actually, yeah, that's a negative way of thinking to me. Right. Intersect.
So this one, let's see if I can get this last thing here, brick generic copy here. Okay, so as I play around with this, we end up with different combinations, but I've made this lower priority than the insulation and then the outer one there. So yeah,
Yeah.
it.
That's okay. That's good.
Yeah. So okay, so we know where we know some of the tools that you'd need and related to possibly creating additional building materials, changing reference lines.
Yeah.
So that things do clean up, and it may be that we want to move the reference line up here, actually, rather than down there. But and changing the renovation filter options potentially to have things clean up to each other, because we don't want to say that this is existing when it actually is new. We want to you know, go and get the you know, you'll need the overall stuff that we were demonstrating earlier to work. So this is a complicated thing, and one of the limitations of Archicad's renovation system is that when changes are made to a part of an element, like if you removed cladding and you replaced it with a different type of cladding, unfortunately you have to basically tell Archicad to demo the whole wall and put in a new version of the wall, you know, even though you might not be doing that. Same thing with the roof. If you were to, well, you've got an existing and a new, and we were able to pull back the new part to just be where it's extended. But in some cases, you're going to have parts of the existing to be removed, and you actually have to split the roof into two pieces, the part that remains and the part that is going to be removed. You can't just say existing is the whole thing, and then this part comes out. You know, you actually have to make it a puzzle pieces, you know, that sort of fit into each other.
Yeah.
So I could certainly help you more with this in the Archicad coaching program if you can't figure it out here. It is complicated. Once you have it figured out in one area, you'll certainly have a good chance of getting these intersections working in other places that are tricky. And the other possibility that I'll mention is, while I do think that this is achievable if I, you know, took another 10 minutes, there is a tool called the patch tool, which I don't recommend using frequently, but the basic idea is I draw a marquee around an area. I go to the document, let's see, what is it? Annotation, create patch. And what that does is it allows you, and I'll just leave it as the word patch one, it'll put into your project library a graphic that if I now select it, it's actually put a 2D graphic on top. And this graphic here, if I put it back in place and say that I'd like to open, say, I guess with it selected, I go say libraries and objects, open the object, which happens to be that patch object. And now I'm in a 2D environment where I can literally go and, you know, delete, let's see, take, we'll just do one quick thing here. Get rid of that line. These lines there, stretch that to there. So this is sort of, and maybe we get rid of the line. Okay,
Yeah.
so now we have something that sort of looks like it's wrapping cleanly. And then of course we have this fill go away. So we'd be doing, you know, some of this stuff. I'll just leave this slightly, well, unfinished. I'll save it. And now when I go back to the ground floor plan, what we'll see is that the unfinished work here is in place. So I can basically redraft this. But remember, this is just a purely 2D exercise. Here's the original thing. So that is called a patch.
Okay.
And
well, that's actually very useful.
Yeah, so in some cases that is the best practice to do it. But in general, what we want is, wherever possible, just get Archicad to understand the relative priorities of the building materials and have it clean things up.
Yeah.
But this is
Yeah.
the
I mean,
alternative.
I'm probably I'm not stretching the limitations of the Renovation Tool one iota, but it's you know, for a bit of a newbie that's just trying to work your way through it and get drawings that make a proper sense. Sometimes you just want to get a bit of pen and paper and say, look, this is actually what I want to try and achieve.
Yeah,
That's
definitely. So I do see some comments from people, very constructive ones. So Josh Varan said, any chances to do with the renovation status of each wall? One is existing, one is new. You hit it right on the nose there. And Tom Palmer says, draw a fill over that location or the patch tool, which I have done, which definitely is another alternative. And Gary said the walls are not intersecting together, join them, which had to do with the limitation or the option that was set in the renovation filter. Jim Schlegel says, how about floating just a short piece of wall composed of the higher value insulation over the brick? So you could potentially even, instead of having a composite like we're doing, in this case, just make little pieces of wall there. And Richard White says, since the interior of this joint will not likely be seen in anything but plan, is it possible to add an opaque drafting insulation fill? Yeah, so you can do some 2D cleanup. You can break things up into multiple pieces. My inclination always is to say, all right, well, if we just had a slight variation of the building material for a piece of wall, can we get it to just automatically do the right cleanup?
Yeah.
Yes, but probably, it would take a little bit more time. So thanks for giving me a good thing to go over. Is there anything else before we move on?
No, it's been very useful, I think, Eric. It is a powerful tool, and there's lots that I'm learning all the time. The stair tool is a nice tricky little one, I must say. Yeah, it's continuous work in progress for me.
For sure. Now I'm going to just save this as a variation and I'll send that back to you. Obviously, this area here you can just study. What I did change, added 2 new building materials, that were copies of existing ones. I created a new composite that, was only partially successful. And I did move around some of the building material priorities, which, let's say, would need to be studied more carefully because, maybe that as I move things around, certain other things will not clean up properly. But you'll have this file to, at least look at and sort of see what's going on.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's great.
And if you'd like some further help, just I encourage you to join my coaching program because I do weekly calls, and we can certainly, over time, get you all, get everything working for you. So.
Yeah, I think that as because I'm working with one of my my stepdaughter, the trick is, she wants instant gratification and satisfaction that she's got something straight away. So the other tool I've been playing with is the zone tool to create internal renders, and I found that to be fantastic. I have to say, it's really impressive. You can get some really good representations, and that's really, as a client, that's what they're trying to visualize, and that I've used that to great extent. So,
okay.
As I say,
So in terms of satisfying the client who wants instant gratification, or can't you just fix that? So if you hearing that and saying, all right, this is a complicated intersection, I would just go for the patch. Because basically probably in 3D it looks okay, and you just use the patch and you just make it the way, like a mini detail, how these are going to clean up. But I'm always looking for, okay, what if you have other intersections like this? You don't want to create patches all the time. You just want to have the wall types working. But the patch would be the instant gratification.
Okay.
So. All right, I'm going to move on. So let us go on to, so Monica says, aren't we at Slack for this call? Yeah, I see Monica. here. I sent you direct the survey DWG. So this is our Slack workspace for the Archicad training course that I run, the Best Practices 2020, as well as the coaching program. So the reason I'm pulling this on screen is because in Slack, people can see each other's comments. I can't actually move or the palette where I see all of your comments from GoToWebinar. It won't broadcast on screen. That GoToWebinar doesn't send that over. So for those of you who are in, the coaching program, you can use this. So I know, Monica, you have a question. I think this is a good one related to surveys and point elevations or elevations of the project. We can go on to that. I do have that file open. I just wanted to check a couple other people who submitted if they're around. Let's see, so Buzz, you're on, so we can do that. Actually, Monica, if you're okay to wait, I think Buzz's file I can answer very quickly, and yours will take a little longer. So if that's okay, let me open up Buzz's line. You can let me know, Monica, if you have to get off soon. Buzz, your line is open. Let me click on the microphone icon. I hope we can get you connected up. And let's see, this is the file here.
Hi, Rick.
Hey there. So you sent in a question saying, I've got these deep copings for the building and they're not cleaning up to each other. What can I do? And one of the things that clued me into the issue or the limitation of your approach is that you mentioned these coping objects. So this little shape here is an object. And as such, objects will basically just sit in space. You can move them around, you can stretch them, but they don't automatically pay attention to each other to clean up. And this would be a natural for a profiled beam. So fortunately, I can quickly create one of these, and I'll show you, how that's done. So I'm going to look to see if you have an elevation that would have this information like this particular edge exposed. So if we look at, guessing that it's south elevation, but I don't know which orientation it is. Okay, so we do see a piece in here. So this is your coping object?
Correct.
Okay. Now it's we're seeing it in, well, it's in elevation. I don't know if this is straight on. I'm assuming it is straight on. What I want to do is copy this as a graphic and paste it into a complex profile window. Now, given that it's an object, I'm not quite sure whether I'll be able to do that directly. So let me just say copy, and we'll go now to the options, complex profiles, profile manager. And I'll say that I'd like to create a new profile, and we'll list coping 1. And this allows me to draw a shape that's going to be used as in an extruded form in your model. Now, let's see if I can paste this in. Okay, yeah, it looks like it came through cleanly here. Now, what you'll notice is that there's this little X. The X is the origin point of this particular profile. Now, what we want to do is position this shape, which is no longer an object. It's literally just a fill. We want to position it where it'll be easiest to draw it. And I'm going to guess that if I drag it down so that this point here is what we want, and I'll take, these are now lines, so I'll just go and select all the lines by activating the line tool and doing Command A or Control A, and then I can drag this down. Now, the complex profile will actually ignore the line work. It'll only be paying attention to the fill, but I thought, actually, let's just undo this. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to get rid of all those lines, and then I'll just select the fill and say I'd like to have a contour around it, and maybe just make it a thinner contour. there. All right, so now this is a shape that I can say I'd like to be able to use with beams. Now it's possible we might use the wall tool sometimes, but primarily I'll use it as a beam option. Now what is this actual, what is it made of? Well, it says here that it's a fill that's going to be represented or made in the model as masonry structural. Now, maybe that's appropriate. Maybe we want, but I'm going to guess that we do concrete precast might be a better option.
It'll be rigid foam.
The rigid foam. Okay. So then, do we have a rigid foam in this? Well, let's just do it here, and then we're not getting sidetracked. It's basically going to be something that is applied and follows around, to create the ornamental shape. Did I get this right? Yeah, the origin point is in the middle of that. So I've now saved this. You can see that it now shows the preview. Now, how would we draw with it? Whoops. Go back to the plan. And I'll just demonstrate that when we use the beam tool with this, now I just clicked on the plan and it's giving me a spinning ball, so I don't know why it was taking a while. Let's turn off our trace and reference. And I know this is just an excerpt that you copied over, but I'm not quite sure where I'm looking at. Would it be in this area here, but up higher?
Around on the other side, the top side.
This side here,
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah, along that front wall right there.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the beam tool. Now, right now, I'm not going to worry about what elevation. I'll move it into the right elevation later. I'm just going to say I'd like to draw a sequence, and I'm going to literally just let's say choose the beam architectural. We'll say unlock this layer here. Oh, actually, I have to choose the. We're doing a complex profile. And the complex profile that I'm going to do is the coping one. And now as I draw this, we are seeing, this rather complicated shape. Now I'm guessing that that the below is the little top part that's just got the very simple little cap. And then the part that's above on my screen is the ornamental shape. And I'll just draw that up. And I'm, deliberately not trying to fit your building. I just want to show how it'll clean up to each other. You can see the representation on plan. When you're drawing beams, you can choose whether you show the reference line or just the contours. That's optional. But let's just take a look in 3D at what I've just drawn. Now, I didn't pay attention to the elevation, so it's probably lower down, but here it is. And you can see how cleanly, it is doing the corners. Now, we can, the surface appearance of this, is based on what building material it was. I can override that, or I can edit this. Let me just say edit it and say, probably as a starting point, we don't want it to look like a dull concrete. We want it to be, painted. So I'll just go and, let's see, we go here to components.
Ceiling white.
Let's see, override surfaces, and you have it as ceiling white.
Yeah.
So it'd be color white ceiling. There we go. Okay, so that's uniform on this, and I'll save it. So now if I go back to 3D here, now they're a bright white.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, so you just basically will drag this up into position, or just draw it with the right point. So if I just say this one as a starting point, if I get rid of it and we just draw on the plan, let's see, so we're on the first floor. Let's go up to the next floor up perhaps. Yeah, here, I just deleted that. So we're going to go to the beam tool, and you see how it just, we can snap here, and I'll just turn the corner. Let's see, what point should it be? Should it be this, or should it be?
Get me.
Okay, so I'm not seeing anything that's snapping here. I'll just use the shift key to do that. And let's just see what that looks like if I've gotten it in the right. So it's on the wall. I just need to change the elevations, get the elevations there. So if I even wanted to just get the basic thing done quickly, I can drag this corner point up until it snaps to your object. And now it is exactly, I think it's in the right place. And
Perfect.
yeah, so just once you've got this, then you can literally go, and we'll just delete these from it. Take this and stretch the end of the blue line right there with the option to extend this, and snap that. Whoops, I don't think I quite got that there. There, that's the point there. Although it actually looked like your walls were slightly offset. But anyway, you get the idea. It's going to clean up at the corners nicely with a complex profile used with the beam tool. So should be pretty quick once you do that. That makes sense?
Perfect, Eric. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to go and we'll just save the project, and I'll send it back to you. Save as. So I'll send it back to you after the call. So
Thanks so much.
you're welcome. So let us see. Okay, I see Josh Baran said he had to leave. Okay, I don't remember if Josh sent me in a file. I hope he wasn't one of the ones who was waiting to have a file looked at. So Monica, I think we can do up next. Let me just check who I've got on tap here. And this is still saving. Oh, project review. Oh, meeting room is being taken over, and he was the one who had a template. Okay, rejoin again from the shared group workspace if possible. Okay, that's too bad, because he had sent in a template. Okay, didn't realize, and it's very early. He's down in New Zealand, so he was. I thought he would be on till later. Okay, we'll see if he comes back. He said he might be able to come back. All right, so Monica, let's get your file here. Okay, so I do see a question from Mike saying, when I do a 3D cutaway in a design view, is there a way to have the cut through area show up in a tone or color? That is an easy question, Mike. And so let's do another easy one. This is going to be literally 3 minutes, and then we'll do Monica. And let me open up Monica's line. Monica, and then we have Mike, your line there. Okay, so Mike, your line is open. So in terms of a cutaway in a design view, let me just switch to my sample project. Just so if we look at the sample project, that I use often for demonstration, I'll do a marquee cutaway. This, and perhaps set it up to be multiple stories. Say show just what's in the marquee. Now, when we're looking at what's in the marquee here, we're seeing the edge with the components. Now, there are two things that can affect this, or that you can control it. One is under the view menu, elements in 3D view, filter and cut elements in 3D. So we are cutting with the marquee tool these elements, and we can say instead of using the element attributes like we see here, I'd like to give it a custom edge. Now black would be one choice, like that, and it doesn't look really solid black, but it is a black, just sort of, I have a lot of light on in this. Of course, I can go into this and change it to something else, you know, like for example, one I like is say a red. It you know, stands out as there, but you can do that. So that is the main place you do it. This can be saved in a view. So if I were to create a view here and say cutaway bathroom with red faces there. So there it is. Now I'll show you a different cutaway here. So we have cutaway. So this is obviously a larger slice of the building. Here's the red. So basically all I did was change the cutaway settings that I just took the dialog and then save that as a view. And when you go right now, it'll have the red, but if I go back to this natural one, then this filter and cut elements will be use element attributes. So it's saved in the view.
Perfect.
Does that help you out, Mike?
Yeah, it's really slick. Thank you.
Okay. All right, and let me see. Michael Steitzer says, are copies of these sessions available somewhere? Eric moves so quickly, I'd like to go back and review. Yeah, I do record them. Generally post them up on my YouTube channel and on the Archicad user website. I've gotten a little behind with all of that. In part, many of you have heard I had a heart attack in May, and I've been trying not to work as long hours, and so some things just are on the back burner and don't get done promptly. But yes, the recordings should be available. I'll try to get this up on YouTube, you know, within a few days. Okay, so Eric Edney says, is there a way to make that roof cut through just a single line, not the thickness of the roof structure? When you say, oh, in plant, I mean, like the old school standard type of the zigzag of a stair. Oh, and Josh, you made it back to the webinar. Good. Okay, so then we'll have Monica's question, then I'll go to you, Josh. So not sure what you mean, Eric Gedney. Make the roof cut through just a single line, not the thickness of the roof structure. So if you can clarify that a little bit more. Okay, so let's go to Monica. Now, Monica, your line is open. Do you have a microphone?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so let's see, your file, Tallman, I think?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have a file here, and let me bring up your question. And so your initial question was, can you help me to fix the elevation to match the survey? I tried to adjust sea level to be at the lowest elevation number in the survey, but now the house is way below and inside the terrain. How can I change it? Okay, so let's look at the model. Let's look at the survey data and get them reconciled. So right now we are looking at site plan new. You have a view of the 3D model. Well, you actually probably have a 3D proposed.
Yes.
So, so we're seeing this rather tall chunk of terrain, and we're not seeing the building at all. If I go to the wall tool and say select all walls, we can see they're way down in here. Okay, so let's look at your story settings first of all. So I'll just go to any one of these stories and say story settings. And it says that your you know, floors, your basement you've set as the 0, your project 0. Okay, so that's fine. That means that all your elevations for the upper stories and the different roofs are just positive numbers on top of that. And it's coming through as decimal feet. Are you working in metric?
It doesn't really matter. The survey is in metric, I guess. I'm
Okay.
not sure now. Yeah.
So if I switch my working units here, and somebody asked a question about working units and what do you suggest or something. So working units really is optional, or let's say it's up to you based on what you're comfortable with and what the standards are in your local area. So you're in Canada, right, Monica? Is that right?
Yes, in Canada.
Yeah. So in Canada, it's a hybrid, you know, because I mean, I lived there for 18 years, so I'm somewhat familiar that a lot of people grew up with feet and inches, but they changed officially to metric. And the building industry is also influenced by buying US materials, so materials made in the US. So, you know, things like studs and, you know, and boards and things like that are often US standards in terms of inches. So they're not the same as something that's made in the UK or Europe where, you know, it may be all metric. But anyway, we'll just say put it into millimeters here as a length unit. We're probably not dealing with area right now. We're just dealing with how far apart things are. And I'm going to say that we don't really generally need to go down to below a millimeter accuracy. So now if I go, you know, to our story settings, we'll see some numbers here. Now, they're not necessarily any easier to make out, you know, so I don't see nice even divisions. So, but that's okay. Are you more comfortable with the metric or the feet and inches, or it doesn't matter?
It really doesn't matter. Millimeter is one I never use, but meters or feet and inches would be fine.
Okay. Now, by the way, is the survey in metric or in feet and inches?
I'm not sure now. I'm confused. I have to double check. Some surveys are.
Do you have a survey information here that has just got some text information?
Yes.
So we have 614, 615. Are
It's
these
in feet. It's in feet.
feet? Okay. Well, then what I just did was unnecessary. So we'll go to working units. We're going to say that we're working in feet and fractional inches in general, and you know we'll say it down to the eighth. So this is how it'll read off to you here. You can always input down to, you know, anything. You can say it's 100th of an inch, even though there isn't something like 100th of an inch. But this is what it'll read off to you.
It will be actually, you'll be better. Actually, you see 615.11. That's a decimal feet.
All right. So we can say feet and or decimal
feet. Yeah.
Okay. And
2 decimals.
We need at least a couple of decimal places there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have the 614, 613. So this is 600 something feet above sea level. That's why you had that, you know, rather crazy platform for building, right? Okay. I see this so often in terms of people getting confused with it. The first thing you have to think about is under the options menu, project preferences, project location. And when you're setting up a project location, and by the way, this dialog has changed a little bit over the years. We're in, is it 23, I think?
24.
24, okay. I looked to see which one you were in, but there's some more information now in 25 here. So here's the altitude above sea level that your 0 is. So you did correctly put that in, saying that my basement at 0 is 611 feet above sea level. Great. What that means is that you can then, when you have your building, so let's see, let's go to the basement story here. So if I select a wall, the wall is 0 feet above the current story, the basement story. And if I were to say, well, relative to sea level, it's 611 feet. So Archicad is keeping track of that very conveniently. It's showing the height relative to the current story or to sea level. Now you mentioned that you want to have grading points to show, you know, point elevations on your terrain that match the actual altitudes. So that certainly is a critical coordination issue there. Now, we have the walls, we have the building. I imagine the building is all, you know, generally fitting together. You've got a design that you've been working on. You just move some things around and you've gotten them buried and off track. So probably the place where we need to look at is in the, actually, is it site plan new? Or
Yes, the new one.
okay. Now, do you have a mesh? So if I go to the mesh tool and I say select all meshes, I don't, no meshes.
The layer is turned off for this mesh.
All right, so
can
you
turn
don't
it
have the
on.
mesh showing on the site plan. So let me just go to the layers and what layer is the mesh on?
Terrain. It's terrain existing.
Terrain existing here.
Yes.
All right, so I'll turn that on temporarily. And now we can see something show up. Select it, actually select, go to the mesh tool and so we should make this the quick select turned on. So that way, when I hover over something, it will be able to select the mesh. And when I have the mesh tool active, it prefers the mesh to something else. Maybe if there was a slab, concrete slab, it would still prefer the mesh. Now this mesh right now, you have it set relative to sea level, its height as, let's see, so you have the bottom of it 606 above sea level and the top there. Now, this actually could be a good setting. Let's just see what you've got for these, the point elevations. So this point elevation, these points that you've got input are 617 feet above the reference plane. That's why this whole thing is off. So while you moved the mesh up to a good location, these individual points were already floating off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to not make any changes there. I'm going to make a guess that if we were to put this at 0, and I'll just put 11 here. Now I can always undo this. Let's just see what happens in 3D when I do this. Okay, so now you can see that the mesh is moved down and the building is now approximately, you know, at least it's not totally buried. Okay, so let's look at the coordination that we have here. So if I zoom in on this 618 feet, I select the mesh. We've got your terrain points here. I press down on this one and I say, well, how high did you set it to be? It says 618 feet to the mesh reference plane. Now, the mesh reference plane, I said the bottom was 0 and the top was 11, but actually this should be something like, and traditionally it'd be -10 and 0. So I want it to be basically the reference line, which is this little top one, is 0. And now these points will relate to that. So 618 feet, it should work. Now it's still going to be a super thick mesh, but we should see the building now working. So now this looks a lot better. I mean, we have some cleanup to do, but definitely if you know, these points, if we use the measure and I hover over a point, you can see the Z coordinate. Well, actually, the coordinates numbers are related to the project 0. I don't know if there's a way that we can change our readout here to be relative to sea level. That's an interesting thing. But I believe we've got this now working. Now the colors here are weird because I don't have your surface textures.
No problem.
Yeah, but now we've got this coordinated. So if I select this wall, you know, it's going from the basement level up to the upper floor. So that's 600 and whatever above sea level up to, you know, if I switch to say, what is it related to sea level, 61106, you know, whatever. And this we know is set up properly. So your points, and just to reiterate, any one of these points, if I go to the 616, let's just select this. So if we go to the 616 and go to the Z height, it's 616 to the mesh reference plane, which also happens to be 616 to sea level. Okay, so now we have this coordinated. Now you have a problem that you have this really huge platform, right? Which is totally unnecessary there. Now we may be able to fix it in, there are different ways to fix it. One is we can go down to the blue line and just actually down below the blue line, this point here, and say that we want to change the thickness of the mesh. Now remember, the thickness of the mesh, you can see over here, it says it's minus 10 feet. If I take it down a little bit further, it's going to be, 18 feet. Now, sometimes I've been able to just take this up. No, it's not letting me do that. But if I type in a number like 20 here, no, let's see, this is sea level. So I'm not quite sure why sometimes I can do this and why not. So it is possible to do an inverted setting so that the bottom of it is actually considered higher and it actually cuts off the bottom. If we can't do that, then there is another simple solution, and that is to use solid element operations to say, you know what, we don't need anything below, this general height. So how do we do that? We just go and create something here. I'll just do a slab, and we'll put this on the same layer that the terrain, was it terrain existing?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm just going to draw a just a simple slab. Let's see, airspace. No, we want something strong that will have priority. Let's see, we'll do concrete structural here. And I'm just going to draw a box around this. So I think the terrain, yeah, so that extends that there. Now, when I go to 3D, we'll see that little piece that I just drew at an arbitrary height. So let me just take this down. So I'll drag it down to some height here. So now we've got enough of a platform, and what I'll do is I'll use the solid element operations. So solid element operations, select this mesh as the target, select this slab as the operator, and do subtraction with downward extrusion. So it'll subtract wherever they pass through each other and everything below that. Okay, now you can see all these little dots. The dots won't get in the way when I say fit in window. We're now, looking at a much more reasonable thing. And I can take this this in to the exact boundary of the site. I just wanted to make sure that I was, reasonable. And I don't even quite know if your site is rectangular. It might be slightly off rectangle. So
It is off. It's not perfect.
yeah. So you just make it a good fit. And you can also put this on a layer that you hide, but you can't delete it, because if you delete it, the relationship will be forgotten.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the way to fix your existing thing, is I put the mesh reference line on the sea level, and then your contours all work. Now, if we were starting over, what I would do is say, and I'll just demonstrate this briefly, I'm going to take the mesh tool, and actually I'll just eyedrop the existing mesh. So it has this.
Eric, let me just interrupt for a second. If you try now in the site plan to just put an elevation marker, it still doesn't work, I guess.
Okay, all right, so let's deal with that.
Really a lower number.
No, okay, so we have, here we have the 630 one, and I'm going to do a point elevation. So I'll do a point elevation, and I'll say, so here's the 630. I'll just do it on this point here. It says 18 feet, 11, whatever. That's 18 feet above the basement level. But what we want to do is select this text here and say that we want this text to not be the measured value that is based on the project 0, but custom text. And this text, it says it's currently showing to project 0, which is the basement. I can change this to sea level. And here's the 630.
Okay, that's the trick.
Yeah. Now, if I put in a bunch of these, and I'm just going to do them at random, like I don't want to. Well, actually, I'll do them on the. I'll do them on the markers here.
Yeah, the points will be more important around the structures.
I understand, but just for a quick demonstration of this.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to select all of the level dimensions. And you notice that I don't have any controls over the text when I select them. But if I select one of the text items here, then I have should select the text here. You should have the text one. Let me see. Why is this?
I believe you don't, because one of them is different. Already you've done before.
Well, no, it shouldn't matter. Let's see if I select all of these. There are 6 of them, but I've only drawn 5, so there must be another one somewhere else. So let me just and maybe that one is locked, or I'm not sure. Let me just select a bunch of them if we were starting from scratch. So you can see we don't have controls over the text, but if I select one that is like this, are we not? Okay, there we go. So what I had to do was deselect one of these and select just the text here. I believe that even though I've got all of these selected, that I couldn't edit directly. The last thing that I have selected is just the text, and then I can say change it from measured value to sea level, and you see they all change.
Okay.
All right, so basically you want to place them wherever you need them, select all of those level dimensions, deselect one of them and select just the text, for it, and then change that text to be custom text, but one that is, it says to alt value, but it's actually, it's to sea level, so to altitude value above sea level. So that's what gives you the right thing there. Now, what I wanted to just point out is if this is an issue in terms of Archicad's interface, it doesn't give you an option when you're placing this to say what your reference is, but you can change it later. It's a little tedious, but it takes 1 minute to do once you know how to do it. The other thing though, you shouldn't have to cut off the bottom of the terrain, right? You should be able to just have it be only as thick as it needs to be. So here's what you do. You go to the mesh tool, and instead of saying that the top of the mesh is 0 in relationship to sea level, I think this was like 611 feet. So I'm just going to say that it's going to be 600 feet is the top, and the bottom, we'll just call it 590, right? So this is going to be just a 10-foot thick platform, and I'm just going to draw this off to the side. Just draw a rectangle. So now this is a 10-foot thick platform. If I go to 3D, we should see it just floating next to the terrain. You can see. Okay, now with this, I can put in the same contour lines that we had there. So if we imagine this being in place of the one that you had that was 600 feet tall, is only 10 feet tall. So if I go in to do this and I select this, and let's say I was tracing the contour lines, I'm in the mesh tool, I've got the mesh selected, and I click a series of points like you did, and say that I'm going to make the elevation here to sea level. So let's say that it was 630. So 630, apply to all. So I can type it in to sea level, but actually related to the mesh, it's only 30 feet above.
Mhm.
So basically the mesh now, so this is going to be a little bit funny just simply because this was 600 and this is 630, so it's going to be a little bit high. Let me just take this point up here and we'll say to sea level, let's say that it was 640 there. And we'll do one more thing, say this is the 20-foot level. So we'll do this, and this is going to be to sea level, well, let's say 620, apply to all. So now at this point, we're going to start to have something at least recognizable as a terrain model. So you can see that it's, the 630, the 640, the 620 in there, but it's starting at 590, right?
Yeah.
So
That
rather
makes
than
it
starting
easier.
down at sea level and saying, because of course the Earth goes down thousands of miles down into the ground, so it's an arbitrary cutoff point, sea level versus whatever you need. So I would
Yeah.
always set the base level of the mesh at something reasonably close to the bottom of your site,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah, that's what I try to do. Yeah. If
and
you
then
see, if
yeah.
you see on the right, on the left, I mean, another site there,
Mhm.
that's the one I started from. I started this one before the survey. They sent me initially one survey only with points and not contour lines, but it became so confusing. But this one I could make it shorter, right? It wasn't long, but the elevation points were still showing like 18 feet, 26 feet, and I said no, there is something wrong. Then I switched it to the other one, and it was that long. So
Okay.
I don't know. I
Well,
did something right in this one. I
this
don't
is
know.
yeah, this is a good starting point. I don't know what's going on with, you've got some points here. Let me just change the override to this top grass. You have a grass here that is actually. Let me just if I turn there. Okay, now I've just made it at least so we're not okay. We're not seeing much of anything, visually because of the. So if I change this to something, I don't know. You have different colors here. I don't know if there's something that would be.
This is another long story. One day I'll have to go through. This is a private consultation probably because it's so confusing. I made a mix between.
What I want is I'll just do one that does not have a texture. So I'll just do a color beige. There we go. We can see just a slight, indentation there. Now, if I wanted to be able to see how the ridges look in reality, I can say user defined or sharp. You don't have any user defined ridges because you just did point elevations. If I say all ridges sharp, now we can see what's going on. You've got, so you've defined some points. They may be accurate, but it's hard to tell what's going on. But you got the survey afterward. You can just create those points like I did, in the last 5 minutes. The one you did will work just fine. The only nuisance is that I had to create a solid element operator to be able to, what do you call it, to cut off the bottom, as opposed to just having a bottom that made sense, right?
And Eric, all this was created based on the PDF the surveyor sent me.
Yeah.
But that's because I couldn't import the DWG, didn't work. So I'm not sure if you have time to show how would work if I would import. Will be much easier than having to trace all those contour lines again, right?
Okay. So one of the issues, well, I have other people that I need to get to, so we can have you come on to one of the Archicad coaching program calls.
Yeah, we can do that tomorrow. Yeah.
Later.
Later.
Let me just make a comment. If you bring in a DWG and you use the magic wand to trace contours, you will very frequently get a highly detailed terrain with way more polygons than you need. Why? Because when surveyors use computer tools to create the contour lines, there is in 2D, there's absolutely no need for them to sort of manage the data, because they can have a contour line that might be hundreds or thousands of points that create a nicely meandering contour. It works fine, but you then trace it with Archicad and the magic wand, and what'll happen is it'll create little pieces of terrain, and you end up geometrically expanding it. You can end up blowing up a terrain from, say, 10,000 points to 10 million points, you know, things like that. All of a sudden, your model bogs down in 3D because Archicad's trying its best to represent all the tiny details that, in fact, are rather arbitrary. So the manual tracing of contours, I recommend in general as a better practice. Even though it may be a nuisance, like I could trace this, you know, with the magic wand in 15 minutes, and when I trace it bit by bit, it takes me an hour. It's well worth the hour, you know, I'll just say that.
Okay, okay. I'll stick with the PDF then, it's better.
Yeah, so, all right. So we have, you know, definitely other people who've put in. Let me see. So Josh, I know, came back. So let's make sure, let's see if he's around, because he had an interesting one.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. Appreciate it. So Josh, I've opened up your line. Are you, you have a microphone? Can you connect? I'm waiting to see if Josh Farran is able to connect on audio there. And meanwhile, I'm looking at some comments. So, okay, single line showing the cut, projected with overhead, full thickness slice of the roof at the floor plan cut plane. Okay, so Eric Gedney, yeah, let's just take a look. And let me open up your line. That's a, you know, should be a simple question to help you with. Meanwhile, Josh, if you're available, click on your microphone icon. I'm hearing some tapping.
Is it working?
Yes, Josh.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, Eric again.
Good. Glad you made it. So let me just take this quick question from Eric Gedney, and then we'll go into your file. So Eric asks a question. I think if I go to, let's go to the roof plan here. Okay. All right. So Eric, did I open up your line? Okay, you have a microphone. Are you there? I hope, because you typed that in a few minutes ago. All right. So I'm going to hold on this because this is. Oh, there you are.
I just had to click the microphone and unmute myself.
Yeah. Good. All right. So if we look at this roof here, we're seeing, you know, what would be a traditional top-down view of the roof. In this case, with a cover fill representing the shingle pattern. Now,
Sure.
This floor plan setting is set for outlines only, but it also has some cover fills. But if you were to switch it to projected with overhead, and let's see what, I'm not sure about the floor plan cut plane. Let me see if I make this a thicker slope, it might cause this to, let's make it 12 and 12 here. Okay, so now you're seeing this sort of effect. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, so you're seeing an actual slice of the roof thickness, however thick it is.
Yeah.
And that is very, especially if you have insulation, it's not.
Yeah, it's not useful for the most part.
Not useful at all. So is there any way to make that just a single line like we used to do when you were hand drafting? You bring the roof up to whatever.
Well, you basically don't use a projected view. You use outlines.
Well, but that does the whole roof. Say, well, I don't want to show the dotted line above. I want to, because that clutters up the floor plan. I do a lot of remodels where I'm inside an attic or a roof comes halfway up. I want to stop it before the wall and not show anything above the line. So it's like.
So it is the roof. is the roof actually continuing and you just don't want to show it, or is the roof stopping at the wall?
It's actually continuing, and I don't want the diagonal lines of the hip in this instance to show through. And I don't want the thickness of a roof to show either. So,
Okay. Well, you might want to
basically
create two different roofs that are stacked so you can control that. I'll demonstrate that off to the side. So let me first of all undo back a few steps. So that I'm back. Okay, so now I think this is set for just outlines only. All right, so I'm going to just select this roof, drag a copy of it over to the side. Now in this copy, whoops, oh, what did I do? Okay, there. Interesting, when I dragged, or did I drag the original? Yeah, let's undo that. Okay, so drag. Okay, so let me just see. Moving a little too quickly. Select this. I'm going to drag a copy. There. Okay. Now in this copy, and then there's obviously complications here, but let me just say I'm going to drag another copy right on top of itself. So I'll click twice. There'll be two roofs there. Now one of them is selected. Doesn't really matter. They're both the same. I'm going to go to the outside edge and say I'd like to cut a hole in this. And I don't have any walls to do this with, but let's say that I'm cutting a hole going across. Let's see if I can, come on, lock this there. Okay, so I now have a hole in this roof. There's another roof that I'm going to now subtract out everything outside of that. Let's subtract. Actually, let me just to make it really as quick as possible. This roof, so this is here. I'm going to take away, subtract out just this whole bottom half. Come on now, lock this in. All right. So now I have two roofs. This one is, and I guess let me get rid of the outer part there. And come on now, this one, subtract out the one here. So this, all right, so now this is a roof. You can see it has the same defining lines there. I'm just going to drag it over to the side, and you'll see that this is the upper part, this is the lower part. Now, if I look at these together in 3D, so just take a look, will I see a line in 3D? I think that they'll blend in nicely. So you can see I left open a gap there. I didn't actually fill that, but here is the upper roof, and here is the lower roof. So basically, if you want to show where it, on a drawing, or you want to show something that only has a lower part, that would be one option where you're saying that you're, instead of literally projecting a cut through which gives you that funny, the sort of the composition of the roof, you literally break it up into two roofs. that would be what one approach that I would consider. And it looks fine in 3D. It'll look fine in elevations, and it looked fine on the plan.
Yeah.
In terms.
It does have complications because I use the CAD image roof tool, so
Okay. All right.
be a
Well,
glitch there.
I'd have to see it in context to see what, if there's a better solution for you there.
So
but
there's no option just within the roof tool to say, or a graphic override to somehow get rid of that thickness.
So if we're changing from outlines to projected, and we had this, let me just make both of these be the higher,
12 and 12, yeah.
the steeper slopes at 12 and 12 here. And you can see this one, this is projected, and of course I could do the same with this just to be consistent. Projected. Now, projected shows where it's cut and everything below. Let's just see, there is cut only. But now we're seeing the worst part of it. We're not seeing any of the the surface. We're only seeing the cut. So that's really the opposite of what you want. You want the stuff around the cut and not no cut. Yeah. Now there is a setting that you could potentially look at. It's under Project Preferences Legacy, where you say that I want to have. They used to have one for roofs. Legacy display options and floor plans for single plane roofs. Let's try that. No, that's not. Thought that with that would stop showing things. Maybe that has to do with fascia or edges that are not vertical and things, but it obviously doesn't change.
One of the options that I considered for keeping my CAD image tools is just modeling like the plywood, the sheathing only. And so that thickness obviously would just be like a fat line.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the roof structure below, that's what I was doing when I'm breaking up a different thickness for the actual roof. And what we would do in real life is cut down the eaves, right, to some smaller thing, but we do different roofs for the structure around the eaves. So that's one of them, but I didn't know if you had some magic with
I don't have any magic
override.
but that is a reasonable approach to stack roofs on top. In fact, it is a common thing for showing that we have a framing space inside the building, and then outside the building we only carry over whatever support, like rafters. We're not doing insulation. We're not having, an underside like, that would have drywall or gypsum board or something like that. So you might have the top be just the covering, whether it's shingle or tile or something else. And next levels down might be, your another roof that has the plywood or the support, and then below that, another piece of roof that goes on the inside. That's the framing area within the inside and the finish.
Yep, that's how I do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're already doing stack stuff, then that might be the way to do it. Just put them on different layers. Turn on the layer that's very thin at the top, and slice through that.
One of the other workarounds that I did was to do an override for the roof lines that made them very light. So they don't bother so much on the plan. And then if I need to, the workaround similar to what you're doing here is just doing a 2D boundary line on miscellaneous, so I'm popping out just the E with a 2D line.
Right. Okay.
Rather than everything else soft. So, okay.
I think you were on the right track with looking at alternatives. I thought I was mistaking your question for one that, let's say, had a more elementary answer, but you've got some sophisticated conditions that you're trying to work with CAD image and different things. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
Appreciate
let's. Josh, are you online?
Hey, Eric.
Okay. So you did type in the question related to Monica's mesh, which is back half an hour ago. How would you dimension a cut area of the mesh or solid element operations used to flatten the building platform? So how would I dimension, like put in elevation dimensions or put in or dimension the volume?
It's more in plan view. You can use the level dimension tool to mark, spot heights of the existing mesh, but at some point you'll probably do a solid element operator to cut a flat building platform.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need to kind of show some dimensions, some level dimensions of what that new height would be. But the level dimension tool reads the, I guess, the unoperated mesh. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem to recognize the solid element operator that's been used.
Okay, that's an interesting question. I know that there are some options, and let me just switch. Do I have here? Let's see, here's is Tallman. Yeah. So when we're looking at this and we're putting in these target elevations here, do we have Gravitate? Okay. So this Gravitate, I know, is used in 3D elements when you say, hey, I want to place a tree or I want to place a, something on top of a mesh or on top of a slab, and you can say, please look for the slab that's underneath my cursor as opposed to the mesh.
Yeah, okay.
Now, I don't know whether that actually works for the point elevations. So if we turn it on by activating it here and then use the, turn it on by activating it here and then say gravitate to slab. Let's just see if I do a slab, let's just do a slab under here. Actually, we do have a slab already, right? We have this slab, which is at 602, right? Just that arbitrary height where I was trimming off the bottom.
Yeah.
So if I go to the level dimension and it's set here, so this, you can see -8 feet, so that's 60, yeah, because 611 is the there. And when I go in this area, it's the same number. It's so it's now preferring flat. So that would be an option if you're flattening it out totally for for a platform. Is you have a slab there and you dimension to the slab.
Yeah, cool.
And then you could hide that slab, or maybe you're going to be having the slab be now the dirt, or the grade there. And you can gravitate to roofs as well. So if you wanted to have a sloped surface.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, if you had two different slabs and two different terrain meshes, and one was operating on the other, I'm not quite sure how you would work with it. It might be that you, by turning on or off different layers, even though the model doesn't change, it might be that the documentation could gravitate to what you've got. Now, the other thing to think about is if I'm, let's say we have, this is a terrain mesh, and I'm going to drag a copy of this just a little bit. Okay. Now we actually have, or maybe I just dragged it. Did I drag a copy? Drag a copy. Yeah, now I have two of them. Okay. The reason I'm doing that is if I hover, when you do dimensions, you can, when you hover over something, okay, we're going to say gravitate to mesh here. You can see how it's highlighting one mesh, and I can hit the tab key and highlight the other.
Cool. Yep.
So now we're saying which one do we want it to pay attention to when it's giving us an annotation measurement. So that's how you do it. So you can do it. You can use it using the. Where am I? Oh, the gravitate went off when I changed the you know, this is associating to things, so it has the option to gravitate to something.
Sure thing.
And then, okay, so that's a nice little elegant thing. You do have control over which thing it is, but it won't be based on the cut area. It'll be based on whichever element you picked. But if you are doing a subtraction with downward extrusion or upward extrusion, then you probably have an element that you can put the
Yeah, definitely.
level dimension to. Okay. All right. Now you sent in a file which we should, spend a little time on, and of course we were at an hour and 3/4. Let's see what we can do in 20 minutes, or possibly extend it a little longer. So this is a template for your firm.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about your firm, what you focus on, and what you particularly focus on in terms of the template, in terms of making sure that it does things well.
Yeah, mainly residential, so single, two-story, probably more renovations as opposed to new. So a lot of the tools or the keys and plans are set up to handle renovations. Have probably a strong use of graphic overrides versus pen sets. Pretty much have one pen set, and rather than telling each element to use a different pen and then changing that pen set and associated pen in a different view, use graphic overrides to pick up the classifications and properties of an element and change its appearance based on that.
Okay, all right. So you're simplifying the pen sets, and you're getting graphic changes based on graphic overrides. So that's it.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're outputting drawings, on the sheet?
Pretty much just using the same default pen set on the drawing. So rather than saying use different pen set, basically just say use the.
So when you want crisp black lines, you're using just this first column?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Pretty
Right.
much
So
the
that's a
bulk.
limitation. That's a severe limitation, but hey, if you make it work, that's fine. Okay, so that's just interesting that you opted for that. Now, you mentioned graphic overrides, so let's go to plan, and actually, so you have just, yeah. So
Yeah, I
just,
drew a few elements in there just to give a bit of orientation. The point of this, cool.
All right, so here we're looking at show all in plan, show, well, okay, so we have show model in 3D. We'll take a look. All right, so we've got just a few elements drawn here, and show all in 3D. What's the difference between show model in 3D and show all?
Basically, you have a story set up where all the, I guess, I'll say dumb keys and legends, but the non-interactive keys and legends, all the walls and 3D elements that are displayed on each layout are drawn on a story basically called keys and legends.
All right, so let's take a look at this story. So we're looking at, would it be under plans?
Actually, if you went to general, which is one of the top folders, and you can see that there's one there, keys and legends with guides.
Yeah.
We do have quite a few interactive keys, but there is always stuff that needs to be drawn manually.
Okay. Wow. All right, so there's a lot to absorb here. Obviously, I'm gonna just look at a superficial thing. So we have site and services, notes. So so you have a little symbol to make it easy to look at. You have
just
some
for using, yeah.
Now, are these notes that are going to be placed on a sheet?
No, so see in the view map, there's the one you got selected now says with guides. The one below that just says keys and legends. That view is basically a duplicate of this view, but has all those guides turned off, and it's that drawing that's placed on a layout.
Okay, all right, so here we have a drawing that's placed on a layout with a legend indicating what various symbols mean, or various graphic elements mean. Okay, so I understand those being legends. What are the keys related to?
Sorry, might be terminology, but legends is probably the best word for it.
Okay, it's just you use the word key here, and
Yeah.
would you say that this is a key and these are individual legends? I'm not quite sure what you're.
Probably to be the whole, maybe it's just the wording of it. I guess that will be the key for that layout.
A key for that layout, and then you have a legend for the layout. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So these are things that are, if I zoom out and fit in window here, you got a whole lot of stuff. Do you have some 3D stuff in here, I assume?
Yeah, I think there's a few walls and sanitary type weird objects.
All right, let me just fit in window. Let me go to the wall tool,
Yeah, so that's,
select all walls. I did select all walls. I'm not seeing any walls come up. So this
actually, sorry,
key,
maybe if you went back to the keys and legends with guides,
and
and
then
perhaps even
I
the
select
first
all
one, I
walls.
think.
No, I do select all walls. They're not coming up. So you must have the layers.
Sorry, maybe walls might be a bad example. Maybe an object.
Okay, so we'd say object, let's say Command A. All right, so these are all objects here. Okay,
And if you
so
went down to the bottom of that list, those are all kind of annotations. I think there'll be things like toilets, gas bottles.
Okay, so and how do you yeah, gas bottles. So how do you access these? Do you eyedrop them or copy and
Well, these
paste?
basically just more of a static. They're hot linked so that we can. That's why they're showing it green at the moment. So as the template and resources evolve, the hot link updates across multiple projects. When a person's ready to basically work on the project and manipulate the keys and legends to suit their project, they break the hotlink, at which point it becomes the graphic override no longer shows and they don't look green anymore. As far as actually drawing stuff on the model, though, it's more the favorites that are used.
Okay. So if we go to window palettes, favorites.
Yeah.
All right, so you have, let's just go into a list form. So you have an extensive set of favorites for annotation. And let's see our walls. Okay, so you have a lot of different favorites set up. Okay, so that's how
Yeah.
you're accessing those. So I'm seeing, a lot of thought has gone into setting up favorites. The keys and legends. I haven't quite gotten my head around exactly how you're using it. I know that in some cases you're placing things onto a sheet to show the legend, explaining things.
Actually, I wonder if you were to go, I can see in the tabs at the top there's a layout already open, which is 301 ground floor existing demolition plan. If you were to open that layout, you can kind of see on the right-hand side there that the top one is sort of those, I don't use the word dumb elements, but they're static. They don't update with as the model changes. Stuff like level dimensions and a couple of fills to indicate existing structures. Below those are interactive keys. So as elements are drawn into the virtual model, depending on their classification, renovation status and properties, these keys will update to reflect what's actually in the model.
Okay, so if I go here and I say open source view. So this source view is actually a schedule.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. And so this is reflecting stuff that's in the model that's being scheduled, that's being listed.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So some things are dumb, as you said. They're just showing images or showing what was drawn, even from the hot linked, and then some are listed and being shown that way. Okay.
Yeah, there's some elements, say for example, on a foundation plan, you might decide to indicate that there's sanitary items are shown on a foundation plan, but it looks weird to see in a key all of the sanitary items. You kind of just want one instance just to say, hey, this is how sanitary ware will be, or plumbing will be indicated on a foundation plan. That's kind of where I guess the dumb key would be used.
Yeah, okay. So when you're modeling and documenting, you're typically using the favorites.
Yes, yeah.
You're listing things in terms of legends or annotation on the sheets based on a combination of schedules and of some legends that are created on a dummy story.
That's it, yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm just trying to think what, do you have, well, in terms of your layout book, imagine this is your sort of fundamental structure that you have that would get adjusted for each project?
Yeah, you can see where the folder you're in at the moment, there's, I guess, 5 of the most common types of plans or layouts that we use: foundation plan, structural plan. There is a folder further down the list which is extra layouts, because there's about 20 odd that we sometimes use: fire rating plans, I think electrical plans. We don't use all the time, but sometimes we have them. So
By the way, I just double clicked on this and tried to fit in window, and it took a moment to regenerate. So,
oh, okay.
And now it has come up here. Okay.
You can see a bit of work in progress on the right-hand side there with those wall keys. Have been playing around with expressions and properties to sort of alter the information depending on the renovation status. I think the one that's actually on the layout is the most developed one. We do quite a bit of residential stuff that involves timber framing. And with timber framing, there's studs, nogs, there's different treatment levels involved with the timber. So I've tried to develop that interactive key to show that information based on the elements in the model. It just happens to be that at the moment, those walls in the model don't have their studs and nogs set.
Okay, so how do you represent your studs and nogs? Now, we use the term studs for vertical framing, and what are nogs?
They're kind of the horizontal members in between the studs.
Okay, so I think we might call them blocking.
Yeah, okay, yep.
Yeah, and then that's separate from the plate at the bottom and the top.
Yeah, that's it. Same here.
All right. Now, I'm sure there's more stuff that I could just, wander around and look at. Is there something specific that you are either challenged by, or you simply want to get feedback? Like, do you think this is the right way to do it?
Yeah, I guess that was more of the approach. Just get a fresh set of eyes, and I know that pen sets are more the. I think graphic override's a little bit underused from what I've seen. Most people, pen sets seem to be the way, but we just found that there was more flexibility by setting everything to have I guess a base appearance, black outline, white or grey fills, and then things like, say, decking and carpet, they actually have their colours set. But say if you wanted to draw a beam and it was we were designing it, it would just show up based a certain way. But if say it was getting an engineer to design it, it would automatically change its appearance based on
Let's
property.
take a look. Since it seems that graphic overrides that you're doing are one of the areas that you put in a lot of effort, and it's quite different than what most firms are doing.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to at least get a sense of what you are accomplishing with it.
Yeah, for sure.
See why you're doing it. So if I go to,
I'm wondering, maybe in the view map there, you're in the proposed plan folder at the moment. Perhaps if you went to the structural plan, which is just the one directly below, and went to the ground floor plan. Now, I haven't actually drawn any beams in here yet, but perhaps if you were to click on the beam tool, and in the favorites there should be a folder there called beams. Take your pick, perhaps not that first one, but any of those high spans or steel beams, any one of those.
All right, so here's a high span.
Yeah, so if you just drew that anywhere on the plan.
All right, so by the way, that layer is locked when I activated
Oh,
this.
I think that, could you just try that favorite again? I think it's not referencing the right one.
Let me, so I'm in the, so I went to the beam and I used the option to bring it up right away. Here's high span.
Yeah, if you double click on that.
Layer designated DES structural beam.
Yeah,
So I double click on that and
there we go.
okay, so maybe I didn't double click it, I'm not sure. Anyway, all right, so I'm just drawing this. Okay, so we've got this sort of reddish appearance with dashed lines on the outside. And if I
Yeah,
go
that's I'm not quite sure where it came from, but that seems to be a way here of how we I guess display structural elements that are specific design by say an engineer. So with that beam at the moment, say if you were to make a copy of it, and say in the properties under B1 structure.
so you're saying,
Yeah, yeah, properties there. So that's basically the New Zealand uses. Well, there's a few. What's it called? Information schemas. CBI seems to be the most common one. I think in the States you guys use. Is it Kobe?
yeah, this is not an area that I know very well. So
Yeah.
just tell me what you think would be useful to demonstrate.
So down that list, there's B1 structure, and it's got structural design, SED, which is basically specific engineering design.
Yeah.
If you were to change that to say not applicable, and go okay, it would change its appearance because basically we don't no longer need to highlight that that's a specific designed element. And there's all sorts of examples through the plans like that on a fire rating plan. If a wall is rated, we would say 30, 30, 30 minute sort of ratings, it would change color based on the properties that are entered in.
Okay, let's look at your graphic overrides and see that one particular change so that on the structural plan.
Basically all those ones at the top of the triangle, they're kind of, I guess, quality assurance or error checking ones. We've got about 15 staff, so if people are drawing perhaps elements on incorrect stories or using the wrong tool, there'll be a graphic override which will override them to pink.
All right, let's take a look at this. So what is the rule here? Element is on the site story, but not on a site layer. So we're basically saying if it's a 3D type that's independent, not a door or a window, and it's the layer name does not contain site, so it's on a layer other than site something or another, and if not, you know, some other miscellaneous ones, and it's not on the right story, then we want to indicate it as something of note, right?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, so I like this. You know, so this is certainly an audit quality checking thing that when you have, well, structural plan has this particular one on there, but I imagine that that might also be available for other plans. So if we look at foundation plan, we have
the other thing too is when you hover over an element, it'll actually come up in that little what do you call it, little element info that pops up and actually tell you which. Yeah, say if you were to grab any one of those elements and even change the layer to the Archicad layer. Oh, you can actually see, sorry, when you hover over even that beam, it actually said in there which graphic overrides were affecting that element. That bottom one, 300.
That one, it said graphic overrides was none. Oh, no, the 300,000 structural specific design. Okay. And this one, no graphic overrides. Okay.
That's it, yeah.
Okay, interesting. So if I select this wall, graphic overrides, nothing there. Okay.
If you were to hover over an existing wall, you'll see that there's graphic overrides that are.
So let me, I drop this wall and then let's get our palettes. So we have renovation here. So if I draw another wall similar to this, select it and make this existing, it changes here. And if I am hovering over it with the pre-select, here are the overrides. Okay. So these are the rules that are being applied.
Yeah.
Drafting fill to gray, cover fill to gray, cut fill to gray. So when I deselect this, yeah, it becomes gray as opposed to there. Okay. Very clever. So since we won't be able to go through, you know, all of the stuff, all of the smart stuff that you've got in there, let me ask, how long have you been using the template in this form? I know it's evolving all the time, but how long have you been, how is it working in terms of getting higher quality, you know, fewer issues, you know, productivity, etc.?
Yeah, probably roughly 2 to 3 years in its current state. Yeah, it's always sort of evolving and developing, but it seems to work quite well when you got, I guess, trying to maintain an office standard rather than relying on individuals choosing how they want to display stuff. It's you basically have it. The idea is to have it kind of automated so that when they draw any kind of beam, as long as they give it the right classification, it'll present how we kind of want it to.
Okay. So in general, feels like it's operating well in the firm. It's been around for a while. What aspirations do you have in terms of taking it further? Are there some things that you say, well, we haven't gotten to X yet, or we've only done a little bit of this?
Well, I haven't actually delved too much. Pretty much all of the favorites and anything we draw in the virtual model of the virtual building are classified. Annotation stuff doesn't get classified. Haven't yet really explored the translators and how that gets. I understand if an engineer gets the file, there's ways that the translator can say, I think, convert the object type, whether it's a wall or morph, to I think an IFC name, I think it's called, or you can say, I think it might be classification mapping. It's something I actually haven't really. They had a quick look into it, but haven't done any developing on that yet.
Okay. All right. So translators would be one area. Okay. Well, I'm just going to give you some off the top feedback. It seems like a very thorough, systematic approach, which I like. Yeah, I like that you're using data. So when you categorize something or you know, classify it, then certain things happen. Obviously, you've got some quality checking things that are sorry, what's going on?
I need to go. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll take care of the
I
dog.
think it's too hot to take her, but
Okay,
you need your AC on.
yes, but I'm teaching right now and it's too noisy. Anyway,
Okay.
all right, I'll catch you later.
All right, well, I just have to take her.
Well, she can be with me, that's fine, or she can be outside.
No, it's too hot.
Okay, all right.
Come on, baby, let's go.
Okay.
Let's go.
That's our little one-year-old Brussels Griffon.
Oh, nice.
And it's a hot day today, or getting to be hot.
It's like gonna be like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Come on.
So trying to get back to where I was.
What's that in Celsius?
So 90 degrees here would be, let's see, body temperature is 98.6. So, you know, we're talking about 32 degrees, 34 degrees, you know, so not extreme, but definitely, you know, uncomfortably warm without an air conditioner. They're starting to get there. All right. So,
and sorry, the other part too was rather than people going through and manually selecting all of the walls that would be fire rated and changing them to green or orange, whatever their preference was, you would actually set that as graphic override and have a property available. So if the wall was fire rated, it automatically changes color, and you can have that in keys as well. And I think when you export, say, an IFC model, a builder or someone on site can access that same information by selecting one of those elements and seeing those properties.
Yeah, very, very nice use of data controlling the information. And if we think about it, and I'm just going to talk to everybody in general, when you're designing, your buildings, your projects, you have a lot of information in your head about, what type of wall assembly is going to be, fire rating, all sorts of things about what it is. And then, of course, the job of Archicad to some extent is to represent your design intent in a very, legible way. So as we're doing different drawings, we highlight different things, we show and hide different things. And it's great when Archicad has the information and is set up so that it can show things in different ways based on your needs or based on the need of the, the output. When you do have multiple people, you have a staff, you want people in general to have a clear system to work with that as much as possible, it's easy to see if they've made a mistake, if they've designated something with the wrong type of wall or the wrong layer. Sometimes things with layer issues can be problems because stuff doesn't appear in the right place and you don't notice it until later. You go, oh, there was supposed to be this thing over here and it's not on that drawing, and you end up with a change order. You end up with conflicts due to, miscoordination. So I like, the general approach. It seems so deep that it would take, some significant orientation and training to get familiar and productive with it. But with the use of favorites and with the use of a template that really pre-structures views and layouts, it seems like you could probably get a junior person familiar enough that they just pick the right things, and then you can tell if something is off. Yeah.
They don't sort of need to know, I guess, how it works, more that if you grab the tool and draw it, generally if it doesn't look how you want it to, check the classifications. That's kind of the primary thing. That's I guess the key part, and hopefully those quality assurance graphic overrides guide them in the right way. Might say, hey, it's on the wrong story, or it's not classified. It's always a work in progress.
Okay. Well, so is there anything, I mean, we've gone over time, but just as a last question, is there anything else that you wanted me to look at? Because I'm, definitely impressed, and I don't have any particular suggestions other than, at this point.
With the layout book and I guess issues, you've seen there's a folder there which is our general working drawings, and there's another folder called extra layouts, and that's basically a bunch of sheets that we sometimes send out, but not all the time. When you create an issue, it always adds in every one of those layouts because they never get issued. And so far haven't found a way to get around that. You often find that there'll be jobs that like I know to always, every time you go to an issue, go in and remove all those, but other stuff it's an easy one to miss.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know issues, the sort of best practices there, whether there is an easy way to avoid that. But if you do have things in folders, I guess at minimum, they're all grouped together and you can quickly remove them from the issue. Is that sort of, well, so that's a painful, annoying thing, but it sounds like you're only doing issues every so often, and you're as a manager, you're the person or someone similar is handling it, so it's not like a junior person has to create an issue, get it set out, and
That's a good point.
Yeah. So it seems like it's well, if it takes 5 minutes to fix that and you only do that once a week or, once in a
Yeah,
while,
it's not the end of the world. Yeah.
it's annoying, but it doesn't seem like it's a big time waster. Anything
Yep.
else that seems like they're frustrating, or you just wanted to?
Oh, actually, just going back a little bit to those keys and legends and eyedroppering in the view map, in the plans folder, see at the bottom of that plans folder, yeah, in there down a little bit, there's a folder called plan resources.
Hotlink
And
Modular
this is-
Object Library, yeah.
yeah, that was something I'd seen in one of your videos. The idea that you can, I'm not quite sure I've got it right, but it's basically a worksheet, and on that worksheet, I've got a hotlink module to an object library, so that the guys can use this as a trace reference, and it's working great for the objects, but there is a handful of walls and beams and curtain walls, but they don't show up. It might just be just one of those things that worksheets can't handle it.
Okay, so this is a worksheet. So worksheets are 2D only, with the minor exception or the sort of functional exception that objects can be placed there because they have a 2D representation, but they still carry their 3D information. You can't in a worksheet have a wall or a window or a door or even slabs and roofs that you could eyedrop or that you could select and copy and paste, because they're not eligible to be in a 2D worksheet. So the workaround that I found in terms of having something you can eyedrop that's in a worksheet, that therefore you can just sort of jump to that worksheet, is to have the worksheet have a trace and reference of a view on the floor plan. And so inside in master template, the worksheet for my main legends is blank, and it has a trace and reference that shows a view from the plan
Okay.
of that information. And so you're seeing walls, you're seeing other 3D elements, and you can eyedrop them. You can't in that mode select and copy them, but you can eyedrop.
Yep. Cool.
So that's the workaround that I found, and so far I haven't found any better way to do it.
That's a good way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Josh, you've definitely given an eyeful in terms of the level of organization and things. What I would love to see, and maybe we can do something in a future Archicad user, is a real project where you've got this in use, and then we can actually sort of see, all right, well, let's look at the structural drawing for the foundation. Let's look at this. Let's look at that. And and then see what's making this do its thing, and then draw something direct that's wrong, like putting something in the wrong layer or whatever, and see how it catches the issues, or
Yeah, cool.
things like that. So that would be great. And it would also be fun to see some of the design, because I'm sure if you're working so thoroughly, systematically on the framework of these things, then probably your designs are pretty interesting too.
Hopefully.
Right. So where in New Zealand are you based?
An area called the Bay of Plenty. It's in the North Island. It's about a couple of hours from Auckland, which is one of our biggest centres, and it's on the east coast of the North Island.
Okay.
And I don't think we're pushing 20 degrees Celsius today.
Okay, so you're starting to
slowly getting warmer, but
starting to warm up. Yeah. So good. All right. Well, let me see if there's any comments from anyone who's been watching. No one has written anything in the last little bit, so I think we'll finish up. So for those of you, and let's see, we have 60 people still on the line. So thank you for hanging out and joining us today for the Archicad user webinar. It is my pleasure, as always, to help all of you with your Archicad methodology, your efficiency, and even enjoyment, giving you ways to use Archicad and not struggle. If you want more assistance from me than just these monthly webinars, then Please check out archicadtraining.com for information on my Archicad Best Practices 2020 course. And I also have the Archicad coaching program where I do more of this sort of stuff on a weekly basis. Of course, we deal with beginner questions and we deal with questions or topics like this and everything in between. So you want to reach me, just email support@bobrow.com, and I'll be happy to chat with you or give you some advice about how you can get your Archicad system dialed in. So thanks, Josh. Thanks, everybody. We'll finish for now. Take care.